We are.
Great.
Morning. First on the agenda, we have the corrective action plan discussion. This is in response to the draft OSC audit. Sent that out last night. Also have hard copies if anyone would like one this morning. Of that draft. So this will be up for approval or acceptance on tomorrow night's meeting. We'll respond to the two recommendations within the report.
For curiosity, Dave, what is required to be approved by the board? And what is required to be approved by the board? Because the accepting the audit.
I believe it's the acceptance of the audit, but that doesn't occur until after the report final. The acceptance of the corrective action plan, that's going to go into this.
Okay.
We get a district response to one. We could have, the other option was to just send this corrective action plan in.
Mhm.
Then they would have got it. They would finally report on the board. Both after.
Okay. Okay, we're talking about the cap, right?
You're saying basically the comptroller only came back with one recommendation.
Two of the same thing, multi-year financial, multi-year capital.
Right.
One plan required piece to be done, one plan is kind of the best practice piece to be done. Those are the two key recommendations.
But you didn't separate them in the cap. You kept them together. So you just said there's one recommendation.
There's one recommendation in the draft, developing a comprehensive written multi-year financial and capital plan.
The cap should have, they're separated in the cap. The cap has three.
Maybe I got the wrong copy then.
No, there's three bullets. There was one comment that had three parts to it.
Right. No. That's. But I went and looked at our 2015 one and everything that the comptroller's office said at the end, like the board should. Okay. What the board should do, and I think in this one, they listed how many, 3 things that the board should do.
On page 3, we have a RSIP recommendation. That's what we put as the council recommendation.
No. Can I see the hard copy? The only print out the parts of it. I'll show you down. I might have read it wrong.
Isn't that page 7?
Yeah. So we're that's the methodology thing. Okay.
No, 7.
Yeah. So it said 3 things. Right? So in our 2015 thing, what we did is we took each of the things that the board should do, and then in the cap made a recommendation, so separated them.
Yeah.
Okay,
You can.
Be the same response.
yeah, it's just the form.
Well, that's part of my point. I understand you can do this. I'm just saying, I'll be honest. The state is basically going to say that they get this, they're going to cross their T, dot their I, and they're going to be happy. So the only body that's going to be responsible for this getting done correctly is the board. Plain and simple. The state's going to say this is fine, and then we have to hold the district administration accountable. And this to me is not acceptable. It's, you're getting cited, and you're getting cited at the district for lack of long range plan. And this is the solution. Now, when in 2015, when the board did this, it took each recommendation, separated it, and wrote just enough information so that the public, because this is going to go in the document. This is going to be available to the public, and this is our solution for solving problems with multi-year plans. I think we can do better. That's all. We're not. So that's
I
all.
would also just, I gotta disagree with you, we're not being cited, we're being told that they prefer us to do it differently. It's not like they don't exist, if you talk to them, like, we've had the opportunity to meet with them face to face and have them discuss this with us parents.
Yeah.
They just prefer to see it done differently than how we do it, and there's always room for improvement, so we know that.
So you don't even say that in here though. I mean, at least in.
What's that? Well, we're not gonna be disrespectful to the
Oh, no, no, no,
comptroller.
no.
They're not gonna come out and say that in writing either, that they feel that things are going pretty well, and they just want to see some things done differently.
Well, I'm just going back to 2015, because they didn't agree with one of the things, so they said we respectfully disagree, and they stated what their reasons were. So if you respectfully disagree, I don't see why you couldn't do that. So it's okay, I've taken my point, I'm not gonna belabor it, I think this just isn't acceptable. I think we can be better with, as far as explaining a little bit more, and if we don't, that's okay, I just, I can't accept it. So it's not detailed. Did you read, just go over the 2015, just the point of reference before you did this? If nothing else, just to labor and put down the recommendation like you did before, and then.
2015, remember when Jeff was here? I think we could have answered those multiple board meetings. And the only thing they were happy with that was when we did spend time and had to so we can redo this, Karen, and I think you make a good point. I think we could do it either way, but we'll go through something today. We'll put them in one of those things. If the board wants, they wanted it by the 10th. I asked them to do the 15th to coincide. I think Michael asked them if I can extend it a little bit more. Questions, and then we can bring, it'll be pretty similar, but I see what you're saying. We'll do like the answer for each one. Do it at the next meeting. That's fine. If that's what you want.
Fine with me.
I think that's a very acceptable solution.
Yeah, I'll certify that. Yeah. Yeah, I wasn't in agreement with them, and
Yeah. No, I talked to them this morning.
they were fine, they
Yeah.
they
No,
said it was a good audit, so.
And I talked to them this morning, but I know this isn't new, I've said this before, that I think before things go on the agenda, we should have a discussion about them before they go on the agenda. That's really what, got my danger up, so to speak, and I just didn't think it meant, the standards of what we did. I thought the 2015 one was, it looked good, we're always saying we want, I just didn't think this was up to standards. I appreciate that.
With the merits.
Yeah.
Okay. Any further discussion on the cap? So you're gonna revise your letter. Okay. Everybody good with that?
Yeah, the first week of the-
She said, she indicated this morning they're pretty open about extensions.
Yeah, they're pretty
Yeah.
flexible.
Yeah.
They've been easy to work with.
Other item on the agenda, audit, just a recurring items and the third class audit committee charter items. This included the template and the guidance. I don't know if you want to get into the discussion of what's desired in there.
How do we move forward? Is it up to the audit committee members to come up with the draft, or how do we gotta move it along somehow? What do we have to do?
Yep, that's what would you like us to come up with a draft based on what we think to put in there and go from
Yeah,
there.
probably the best way to start. What about trying to-
It
I don't
looks
think there's a lot that has to change.
Yeah, it's pretty straightforward.
Yeah. Just, do it and hopefully we can improve it. Pretty soon.
One request. For meetings and notification.
3 days for me is like a little difficult for, especially considering this audit's been out for 30 days. And then when I ask for information, I'm getting it at the very last minute. I didn't get it until, I don't know, was it 6:30 last night? Could we be more timely?
With that, I'll take the hit on that one, Cindy, because you're not an official member of the board, the audit's not public entity, so we need to verify that you were able to receive that for legal before we release it. Because you're not bound by the same confidentiality requirements that other board members are.
But I am. By being appointed to this committee, I am confidential, and I know that that can't be released. I've been to state audits off.
I'm not doubting that you are the confidential person. I'm just saying, we've been told that if they're not an elected member of the board, that they are not to be considered confidential. So I'll know back with legal to make sure that that's, what you're interpreting as the rule would be different. But I did say today, when you made a request, please verify with legal that we're able to release that because it's not a public audit. Otherwise, you would have had that too.
Like I say, I realize that there's a confidentiality issue, and I realize I have to abide by that by even being on this committee. So if that helps legal,
And the Kprs just sent an email this morning. To that touch that, it's confidential, but that, can welcome that the information for the audit.
and it was stamped all over it confidential, so it's.
Well, that's a breath of fresh air, because normally it doesn't matter from folks that what might be good thing.
Well, I've been on both sides, so I understand what you're saying.
Okay, that's clear.
I just.
Yeah.
So we've updated this memo back to the controller that we're going to pass tomorrow night. Here we are.
The letter's been revised.
So it's going to be.
Yeah, I mean, pretty much the same information, but it's going to be a different form. By controller report.
We're gonna ask for an extension.
Yes.
To submit it.
So we won't have to approve it tomorrow night.
That's the goal.
Yeah.
Yeah, oh, it is.
Tuesday before Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
Yeah. So as long as they give us the extension, we're still on budget.
Yeah.
We can update the letter with the detail requested and then give that out, send it out in enough time to be able to review.
Yeah, I apologize again for missing this discussion, but can you about me a little bit about it, because there were some plans that we were talking about, the capital plan. Two plans that we were working on. And I didn't relate well to that wording, because unless they're in the future, because, we haven't gotten there yet. Right? And we sort of, I guess, put the financial plan out in front of the capital plan in terms of when they're going to be accomplished. But that's what I got out of looking at the original draft. But you're saying that we're gonna rework that and discuss it again before it's approved by the board.
Corrective.
Yes, the memo. Yeah. Okay. Fine. So,
Yeah, they're gonna, provided we get the extension, they're gonna circulate the new cap, the revised cap, and we'll send it on.
okay, that's fine. Right, 20 count. Okay. Thanks.
So we're gonna get the extension, hopefully. So we have to, the next meeting is the 23rd. So will should we have a quick meeting before that, or? You see what I'm saying?
We could, but I mean, we could just
Or just do it by email?
circulate it. And then
Okay, I just
comment.
want to make sure.
And if there's a lot of comments, then we'll probably have a meeting.
I just want to make sure we're still in, like, the Paul's point that we can
Yeah,
have a
it
discussion
can be
about.
circulated, everybody can do it via email, and if it's too convoluted,
Or you call it,
then we'll meet.
sounds like a good plan.
That takes care of the other thing, correct?
Well, I have the finance committee agenda. First item on the agenda, inflation factors. I just wanted to bring it to the committee's attention. Looking forward, the document included is the property tax cap. What they put out is the property tax cap, highest inflation factors, and just looking at the trending of it. It's not out yet what inflation factor we would use. It's one of the largest factors in our property tax cap, but it's certainly trending like it's going to be at 2%. So max of 2%. You can see from the last one out at 3.33%. It continues to trend higher. For comparison's sake, one of the CPI figures we use for our transportation contract is also trending higher. It's trending in the mid-4s. So I see it as doubtful that this would have come down so much before next few cycles to be below 2%. So I think we can relatively count on the allowable levy growth factor being 2% for the 22-23 tax year.
And you could say, get something to do.
Yeah, I do.
Okay,
Thank you.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
okay, so the 2%, that's a lot.
That's state law, that's the max, and that's kind of the part of it that they equate to the 2% tax cap. It basically says inflation is 2% or higher, this factor in the formula is going to be maxed out at 2%. Even though inflation is kind of humming along higher, in the calculation it will max out at 2%. And it seems as high as it is likely that that will be out.
Oh, yeah. That'll could hurt in the future.
Yeah, if prices are going up faster than the ability to.
Estimate, assume inflation goes, that how they get the numbers going forward.
No, these are all kind of backward looking in the fiscal year where it talks about that usually the beginning of an entity's fiscal year. So for us, the number isn't out yet. It's that July 1 to June 30. So we've still got 2 more of their reporting before we get our figure to use for the July 1 to June 30 budget. But it certainly looks like, judging from all the inflation factors, it's going to be high. So just wanted to make the committee and board aware of that coming into the 22-23. You're likely to see that. Also, with our 22-23 budget, we received guidance from New York State Kprs on what contribution rate they're forecasting, or range of contribution rate they're forecasting for the upcoming year. As you can see, they're forecasting between 10 and 10.5%. They discussed a little bit of their rationale for raising the rate of contribution. Actuarial assumptions with this valuation include lowering this rate of return from 7.1 to 6.95. So the actuaries for PRS are looking forward and trying to make an assumption of their investment rate of return. And one of the factors is they've lowered it. They also mentioned recent member experiences. Members are generally living longer and retiring at greater rates, therefore further increasing DCR, the employer contribution rate. So as you can see that current year we're at 9.8% of instructional salaries for CRS. They're going to 10 to 10.5 to give you kind of a budgetary reference. That's about a 7% increase from the 9.8. And if it was to be the high end, the 10.5, that's about 280,000 general fund budget. Also to keep in mind in the informational center, that's also when we put benefits in any of our grants. It's going to increase by that rate. Of course, if the grant doesn't increase by that rate, putting up against the top end of the grant. And there's an irony here. The ERS is going one direction.
Yeah.
Consider the actuarial looking forward.
Only when I look at the city, the ERS would not be so bad. Freedom fire.
Yeah.
Kind of the same thing here.
Any questions on inflation factors with ERS? 22-23, we've got the district budget calendar that'll be on tomorrow night board agenda as well. The majority of these dates are driven by statute or multiple reviews on it. any questions on the dates, they're essentially, take a look at what the requirements are, what the schedule looks like, apply those. Make sure they meet the regulations.
Here's a couple questions.
Sure.
Like for March 30th, you said the publication league was the first of 4.
Yeah.
Do you have to do the other 3 as well on the budget calendar? Or
No,
no, or I
So
wasn't sure. That's how you think.
no, not required to put it on the budget calendar. We do an internal that's more of a process is not designed by statute. The 4 don't have necessary dates. You have to do them within the dates of the budget. But no, we don't put those on the budget calendar, but we do track them. The publication dates we need to do.
So you have to do the first one though?
Yeah, there's 45 days. I know they serve.
And then my other question was, you've got the proposed budget presentation the 19th, and then the proposed budget adopted by the board on the same time. Could we move the proposed budget presentation up?
We'll do 3 presentations before that.
Okay,
This is what's required on the night that you adopt, you're required to have your annual budget.
right, okay. I want to make sure, because we talked about,
We usually present the budget for the first time in February.
yeah, 'cause we started having those meetings, I think we'll go through them again. So I just was making sure. Well, we don't have to put them on the calendar. We're not legally required.
Correct.
Yeah.
It's a little
Yeah.
bit, I guess I'll use the word that to some degree. This is what's required statutorily versus what we do in reality. It's a lot more expansive than this.
So do we have that budget calendar somewhere else when it's got all the details in it?
I don't, well, the board didn't come up with any date for the budget workshop, whatever you call it.
No, but for the other things, like the one that you're referring to, is kind of like you have almost like 2, the one that you have to legally do that we're gonna approve tomorrow. And then the one that you kind of know is happening, that they actually happen. But you have, is that somewhere else? Or is it just kind of like in your head?
We developed, at the beginning of the year, I developed a schedule for the administration for study sessions. So that's where it will be housed. So we'll do the last meeting in March. Then the last meeting, usually last meeting in February, and both meetings in March, and then April. Sometimes we cancel one of those presentations depending on if there's not much fluctuation in the budget. And then we also have moved away from doing the annual budget hearing combined with the board meeting. So we started that a few years ago. We have a standalone night for just the budget hearing, which is required. So we usually start in early February and then we play it by ear with the board. That's the one they want updated presentation. Is what they want.
Could we, could the finance committee get a copy of kind of like your sketch so we can see, then we can make sure that, if we want to begin, one's gonna be a good time to plug them in. Based on your, with your schedule, or kind of like, if you kind of got things written out, what's gonna work for doing those meetings, just kind of like, so we can coincide with what you're doing and not, be all kind of off track.
The reason I'll put it like we don't have to have on here, so once the board passes it, we're gonna change everything legally.
Yeah, no, I understand it, but I'm just saying that you're kind of saying that you work from 2 different schedules. So we can kind of have a copy of the one that you really,
Formal one, the
yeah,
informal one, one we will probably be doing.
yeah. So we can work on
We have
it.
a template to have it here.
With that second item, which is 5 months. Is all encompassing item in terms of what's going on internally. Most of our, didn't we start our little sessions last year in January?
We did. So we want to start earlier this year. We want to start in December. We want to start having directors present to the board on what their requests are for the department. And then from there, we want to be able to have the mini sessions with the board, talk about the different parts of the budget after you heard the directors that have made their request. Because part of what ends up getting bogged down is, traditionally, right, they're making the request to us and we're having to balance, how do we do this and decrease that? And we think it'll be more beneficial if they when they present to us, they just ask for the world. So I think if they have to present to the board, they'll think twice about just asking for everything they can possibly ask for without any justification versus. And it also gives you guys some perspective when you're talking about where we need to increase or decrease. And it's easy to sit around the table and just say, well, yes, let's do that. Yes, let's do that. Yes, let's do that. But when you have to put all the factors together, it's a lot harder.
So they did seem like a template to follow so that everyone's pretty much presenting like basically. the
Very
same-
similar.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I know how feasible that is, then how disparate the, the directors are as far as what they do and stuff that they request, but you said it would be helpful.
For
to
the
have-
most part, they're gonna ask for people.
Okay,
It's mostly staffing requests, but the bigger piece is the justification. For providing some form of justification about why they do it, or if they want to do a new program of some kind.
how they're gonna pilot it and that kind of
Sure.
stuff.
Yeah.
But-
Or in, like for Alex, for instance, you're gonna get more information. You might get some people, but you might get more on equipment.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Mike Stamboli is one who would present that for more equipment supplies versus people.
Yeah.
So it's gonna vary.
Now, you said directors, the principals also do that?
I'm gonna have the directors do that. The principals present information to the directors that they would like to see, and then I'm gonna have the directors come forward. We have the principals with some face time with you guys in tenure, so I'm just trying to get the directors some more face time with the board.
Yeah, we would send out to all the principals, some choose to physically meet, some not, but we try to documents.
And my feedback was they had no idea. That's all I was about.
Can you tell us if I do
There you go.
We should be ready to adopt this calendar. We should be ready to adopt the official budget calendar.
On the detailed calendar for right now, are you comfortable if we do like week of December, whatever?
Oh,
for
yeah.
a Special
Yeah.
meeting for directors, and a week of January for the.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
we'll just try and block off weeks for those.
Mhm.
special
Yeah.
sessions.
That's probably how you do it anyway.
Yeah, I mean, we're this
realistic.
far in advance,
Yeah.
yeah, but and it's helpful for all of us. Just want to make sure that that level of. They, okay.
Next on the agenda, we have the multi-year financial plan discussion, and of course, this is a draft in response to the draft OSC audit. As a reminder, it's not this piece is not a required report, it's not fully recommended. If you have questions, the spreadsheets that you see in the report, and as we kind of develop it, I'll improve the visual nature of those, not very eye appealing. Those are from the comptroller's worksheets or comptroller tool worksheets. We only put in the first draft for discussion purposes, we only put historical data. We want to talk about the assumptions, projections, talk to the committee about, what goes into that, what a long-term financial plan is, what it isn't. So I'm just going to go through it kind of page by page, of course, stop with any point we want to. On the overview, I didn't know if you're comfortable with this language. This, of course, is what I thought was a nice write-up from an article in long-term financial planning for districts, and just talks about a little bit of what long-term financial planning, purpose is, how it links with annual budgets and how it should. So if you guys are comfortable with that as a lead-in, and it opens the report, to talk about long-term financial planning. Under key assumptions, this is kind of where you get into what creates the projections when you're talking about long-range revenue, long-range expenditure projections. It can be good to look at the forecasting large trends. It's of course not done to the level of detail what annual budget is. It's not done nearly the level of detail of the day-to-day, operations. It will vary from individual year budget. It will vary from actual expenditures. So we noted that. Keep on the forefront everyone's mind as they look at this and develop this, what it is and what it isn't. Essentially, it's taking large scale data and making lots of assumptions in a forward looking manner to try to predict what's coming.
So it's long, here, the long term is defined as 4 years. Is that
That's what they,
standard, or is that something that we? Well,
oh, sorry.
where'd the 4 come from?
The 4, just like is what they put in their worksheet. I will say, if you look at a bunch of district long range planning, you'll see 3, you'll see 5. That's certainly a choice, of an individual district. And there is, in my opinion, certainly some argument for not going much further than 3 at the most.
Okay, so we're in the.
So definitely this, draft status discussion area item. Do we want to go out 4? Do we think that has value? Do we want to go out 3? But this is the standard that comes kind of in the comptroller's work starting point.
Have you seen other districts long-term planning commission?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. And again, you'll see a wide varying range of, what is done. Because it's not a required document, it's more of a best practice. It's really tailored to what the district's looking at.
The tough thing about the long range planning document is it depends on how you want your district to look on paper, is how they'll do a lot of their assumptions. Because if we did this document based on the way that we budget, we'd show like a $40 million deficit in 4 years. Just because we budget so conservatively with our revenues and our expenditures, the rate at which things are increasing expenditure wise with your assumptions of percentages versus the rate at which the revenues are increasing, it does that over 4 years. Some districts are not quite that aggressive in budgeting for their expenditures and then their use of fund balance, so they're going to look a lot closer. That's why I think basically talking about how do you want the assumptions to look in that report are going to be important, because depending on how you assume the future, mostly for expenditures, you're gonna see a quick separation of revenue and expenditure. Generally speaking, so like for the ESSA plan, every recurring cost in that plan, we forecasted a 5% increase year over year on expenditure. That's probably aggressive. It's probably not going to be quite a 5% increase on salaries and benefits year over year, but to make sure that the money is in the plan to support what was there, we made sure that we did that.
What Peter was talking about, how we kind of had this, remember I used to give the projections, there were 5-year projections, and Robert came in and said I would go out more 3 years. So we had those, and some, like Peter said, show out to 20, 30 million, give what you thought PRS would be here, what ERS would be, tax rate. First conversation, what the board wants tax rate increase for the year. So we put this out, not really a public document, I don't think, right? Is it a public document?
That would be public, absolutely.
So now, if you decide to have a 5% tax increase, people are gonna see that, right? So the first conversation, the first line is gonna be, we have some conversations for multiple meetings that we're gonna put before they have to tax, so that's the first thing we got to look at. We just put 2%. 3%. You don't really know your tax cap. 1 year or something's gonna drop off, you can't figure all that out. Maybe have a 10% increase, I don't have to do that.
I think just personally, this is the first glance for everybody. I looked at this a little bit. A couple of things I would comment on is I think that, and I'll work with Dave on this, I do think we should beef up the amount of content we put in writing prior to showing numbers. So the assumptions piece, right? We have to be very clear about the assumptions of tax rate increases year over year. Just knowing the district historically, I wouldn't assume more than 1% tax increase. If you want to show that at all, we can do a 0% increase and make it clear that, look, this revenue stream, but that's going to make that number further apart. I'm just saying, like, whatever it is that we assume, we need to really clearly spell it out in as few words as possible so people know, right? Where are your numbers coming? Define where the numbers come from. And then the only other thing is that I think in some, probably maybe in the back in the appendix, we should add not this budget calendar, but the one Karen just spoke about. What's the internal budget processing calendar look like, just so people know. And then one of those dates, I know Dave said this is reviewed annually, but that could be, every June, whatever, the board will readopt the revised plan kind of a thing and more of that. people are gonna look at numbers and wanna know, where the hell you get that number of projected budget from? You know, it's-
You used to put it in the description box, that's your talking.
I would put up front, at the description box, I think, yeah, we can re-say it there, but I think it needs
You're
the
saying
text
up in
part.
here. Okay.
I would,
gotcha.
I would maybe, in
Yeah,
as
yeah,
few
yeah.
words as possible, try to explain to them the process of budgeting and how the assumptions work. The trick is, let's say, let's say that in the first draft of this, we can do a draft for you all with the assumptions the way we normally do them, right? And let's say in the year 2026, we're showing an assumption budget of $140 million. That's probably low. Let's say $150 million is what the numbers work out to be. We put this out in the spring and we're asking the community for $130 million budget this year. They're gonna lose their mind when they're like, how are we gonna go up $20 million in 4 years? So it's a matter of making sure that you all know this. I'm speaking to the choir. The last thing we want to do is put something on paper that says our budget in 2026 should be $131 million. And we get to 2026 and we need $132 million. Even if we're off by $1 million, people are gonna point back to this. So
They say it pretty strongly, the two assumptions, right? It's not interpreted as in the financial forecast.
yeah. But we're
It's like
preaching
some
to the
words
choir
like
of all
that.
Hagler with that. You know,
It's
like,
highlighted.
you know how this works.
Highlights, yeah.
You've done it before, Paul. I mean, that's why I say I'm preaching to the choir. This sort of people knows how it works. We gotta think more along the lines of somebody that is just mad about their taxes and has never done school budgeting or big public budgeting, that has no idea how this works. We just put ourselves in their mindset. How do you? Almost like I would say you treat this like a tool that you would use in a administrative course in college for someone trying to get their CAS to be a principal. What would you teach them about school budgeting? That's what this document would be. That's how we use it. Someone that knows nothing about school budgeting. This is what it should be.
It might not be a bad idea, because say, just, I'm thinking like a normal person, if they want to skip over reading words, and they want to look at the numbers first, because they're easy to see, to put something similar, like maybe a disclaimer or something right in that description right away, so it's paired. When your eyes see the numbers, they can see the words right next to it, just like a
Like,
simple
yeah,
statement, you know?
I agree.
I agree with you're saying, I'm not disagreeing
Do it
with
both
that.
ways.
Do it both places.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm with you.
The other thing that always made a lot of sense to me, you've done this job for, the 10-year look back, we see how, you can debate what's happening going forward, but you can't debate
What happened?
What it
10
was.
the
years.
history of it. And a lot of times it'll tell the same story. When you have a fluctuation, if you have a year where it goes up or down, there's a reason for it.
Yeah.
Either revenue problem or
Good.
something. And-
Or
Yeah,
just not
that's
spend
what
it.
I'm saying, yeah.
Lower than that, higher, but you're not worried. If you spend $1 million more on salaries, and you're higher, stay entirely.
It's like our internal auditors, so when we use that, we started right off, but, I think we used percent, 88% depending on local taxes and state revenues, basically. And, and that's the factor, either one of those, and certainly local taxes don't change very much, we're arguing over raising 1 or 2%, so the big factor is really the state revenues, which look pretty good right now with the projecting in terms of the educational.
Yeah.
Going forward, if they implement that, it's going to be certainly going to be a lot easier than it has been in the past.
Well, for 2 years at least.
Long range.
My concern is what happens after they get that fully implemented after 2 years. I don't know.
What happens after the election next year?
Oh, that's a real concern.
These budgets are passing these large infrastructure, whatever they're calling that second one.
Yeah.
Which is more other people kinds of things. If they pass, have a better feeling than if they don't. In terms of what this state is gonna want to figure it forward post what we're doing.
Do we want the next draft be 4 year out, 3 year out when we start getting into adding those? Are we comfortable with doing it at 3, or do you guys want it to be before in the worksheet?
Mike, it's going to go before, and I know it makes it hard, and I'll just say, right, just because we've got the SU stuff for at least the next 2, right? So that, so we just go 3, we're not really looking at what post SU stuff is. So that's why my gut tells me before, I mean,
Yeah, I would-
that's my rationale.
I would recommend you start with 4 with spreadsheets.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
one of those.
Can always
Start with 4
Yeah.
and look at the assumptions, and if the assumptions we use make it look,
Too wonky?
Yeah.
Yeah.
or you start there and then you adjust the assumptions and. Yeah, make number 4.
The next page, we just plugged in the historical data. Again, they use 4 years. This is their standard. So we plug the historical data into their worksheet. Didn't want to put in estimated or projected, of course, but we had these conversations. So the estimated, of course, will be the projection of this year end that we're in. The other pieces are kind of visual representations of the same, again, on the controller worksheet. Are there any questions or feel for, again, I know these aren't visually appealing in terms of formatting and so forth, improve those, but any discussion of the actual worksheets for inclusion?
Those categories consistent with the way you use it to track the state and the way track the specifics. Call it with what, I don't know. Our numbers are on
I think it reflects the state report, right?
It reflects a state report. It's close to, I think the one you're thinking of is on the bottom of where our spreadsheets have been over the years, where we have that breakdown. It's close to it, but we have had somewhere been asked to break out, say, energy, which would in these be in the 400s. Under contractual and other 400 to 499. So that'll include, 499. So that'll include materials and supplies in your 450s. That'll include BOCES in your 490s. So here it's lumped together in the budget sheets. If I'm interpreting right, that bottom area that you're thinking of, generally we have that broken out. A little more detail.
We can do with that.
Oh, sure. Yeah, this is just a
They
concept.
can make an idea to separate those out.
I was thinking, I actually, it's more of a general question for me, is it consistent? Because unlike you, who can, relate a topic to a number, I always have to go search it. But now let's see, what is that category? And look at it, cheat sheet, and look at the treasurer's report. And I recognize, oh yeah, I know where I am. I hate to see another system sort of portraying that data in a different way. It seems to me that there should be relatable one, somebody's looking at it, so our budget data should be consistent with what we're putting in our long term.
I think those similar to the projection should be used to do. I don't think they're broken out how the board like it in the past.
Sure.
Nice breakout.
Yeah, BOCES, transportation.
I mean, we've got big ones, we've got the personal services, employee benefits, which are big ones. Federal contractual. That seems like it all tracks.
Mostly that 400 is probably the biggest break up here that's lumped all together. And when you look at it, it's kind of like BOCES, of the 20, say 3, you got transportation and BOCES are the biggest 2 pieces of it.
The one thing that I'm gonna say by looking at this through the lens of someone that doesn't know this stuff, we're talking actual money here in that budget. Most regular persons only think about budget. So when I look at this, I'm gonna look at 2018 and think we overspent the budget by 2.1 million, but we didn't. We we simply spent more than we brought in. The budget, we were still under budget in 2018. So that's something that we're gonna have to, in my opinion, I think we were gonna want to address that in some way, shape, or form. Because this expenditures of 113.8, that's that doesn't line up to the budget number.
But a top line.
Right, the budget was 115, I think, correct, that year? The budget was 115. So just thinking out loud, right, if I'm looking at that, I'm thinking that we only spent the budget, but we didn't. And most times, the community and people are used to working in budgetary terms. What's the budget? The budget, and now we're talking actual dollars here, which is a lot different than what most people hear. Just the food for thought. It could be as simple as adding a line that says
Yeah.
budget.
Yeah.
So people can see.
Actual budget.
I mean, I'm sitting there staring at it. It took me a little while to figure out what the hell is that. We weren't over budget.
You're just bringing the other argument up. Don't spend 108 million, why was the budget 115? Just bring it up.
So I agree. That's answered on the next page. With all of our surplus.
And then the next portion, we did do a reserves plan. Now, this wasn't, part of everybody's financial plan. It isn't something we absolutely have to do. I thought it was prudent to include it for consideration if you want to have that reserve plan and generally consider it best practice. I do think that the comptroller was to revisit us and we had levels of reserves that were reported in here. They would likely or possibly comment that we don't have a reserves plan. So we put that together for consideration to be included in the multi-year financial plan. Excerpt from the comptroller's document, the guide that talks about, I think it does a good job talking about what the reserves are, what their purpose is. Talks a little about why we need a reserve plan or what benefit is. Certainly have language in there I want to make sure you guys are comfortable with. Where it says we as a school board administration believe there is value with the work that goes into the plan and value and additional disclosure and transparency that this plan provides to the public. I don't want to obviously speak for anyone if they're comfortable with that language. I leave it if we want to change it, of course, and so forth.
Historically, we've gone from having reserves to kind of wiping out all our reserves when we were pressed for the revenues to make it kind of more easy to come up with money that we could allocate. And now we're going back because we have a surplus. I mean, I think it's pretty obvious that it's closed because there's a one-to-one kind of relationship between. If you have a lot of fund balance, then you probably have got a lot of reserves, but otherwise you're going to be criticized for having too much unappropriated for other, available.
That's generally what they'll comment. If the over 4% is in the reserve and has a reserve plan, that's kind of what they look for. If it's over 4%, there's no reserve plan, they'll kind of address it. They may call it cited as excess.
Mm-hmm. It's like in Peter or other financial presentations over the years, we've always, when we talked about that, oftentimes cited that, or the auditor does it a lot. That this district over here with a smaller budget has got,
Ridiculous.
a big fund balance. Well, how is he doing it? Well, they've got it in areas that are not, that don't show as what's that? Unappropriated fund balance. This.
Unappropriated is kind of the 4% figure.
Yeah, which is kind of the one that everybody kind of puts over head and shoulders. You shouldn't be holding that money. Should be going back to the taxpayers or whatever. And I guess you're right in a way. If you haven't figured out something else to do with it, you should really, have the fund balance, which is a good thing, I guess. And I think my own impression is I think a lot of our new board members kind of struggle with that a little bit. For Peter's point, Peter's point before about budget revenues and expenditures, you know, they're all related, but they are different. Budget kind of goes away and at the end of the year, and then you're looking at the revenue and the expenditure history, which is probably for
I told Senator Griffin, when you just run get rid of that call, and just get rid of that line, so you can overspend the budget, right? That you can try, not that you, I mean, if you get a call 3 years, you overspend it, or if you want to try to come closer, you know, then that's gotta go away, because otherwise you're not gonna,
Yeah,
you gotta be safe.
Your budget is your worst case scenario.
Yeah, it has to be.
It has,
It has to be.
you don't ever want to spend what you budget.
Yeah.
But that's the problem. If you budget too much, then
Yeah.
it's a hard sell. And it's, yeah, we know. We know.
need the reserve fund something.
Yeah, me too.
We're back
Yeah.
in the reserve
Right,
business.
Yeah.
That's,
Good idea.
And then the rest of the reserves plan is kind of mechanical.
Yeah, just going through them all.
Yeah, talks about where we were, where we are, what's in the current budget or current plans for use of reserve. Kind of satisfies that requirement that they're being reported on, discussed, the board's getting a look at them. And then just in the review plan, which I certainly would think we want to elaborate on, I wanted to get a feel for, do we want semi-annual, maybe January and after end of the year, annual? You know, what level of review we want to make of the plan?
Yeah, yeah, and I would say, prior to Contour, the reserve plan was something I was gonna work on either this year, Dave, anyways. I would include, as part of the reserve plan of recommendations. So you know how the board has to approve formally any kind of money going into. I think when we get to the point where we're revising this, part of the reserve plan should be recommendations for adding or using reserves that can be made. I know in here you show the board resolutions, right? You show all the, you talk about it, but I just think simple recommendations. It would be a recommendation to sort of what you did this year. So, you know,
Time it,
right?
time it before we make the reserves.
Yeah, I mean, when we have a pretty good idea, we just have to develop that calendar of what we're gonna.
I thought on Kprs, I thought we put them in.
We had,
The capital reserve, we did.
oh, not, let me rephrase that.
Yeah, that's what I thought too. That was my only question.
We've budgeted to move $1 million from this year's, but we haven't done it yet. We haven't done it yet. You can do it at any point past, approval of the budget. We could do it now. I don't know that there's necessarily a benefit to do it right now. So we kind of keep that flexible up until the point that it's there, it's in the budget, the senior treasurer.
Well, yeah, well, plus it was 21, I don't think you did it 21, did we?
Correct. It would have been 21, 22 budget.
Right.
Would have been what it's on.
Okay.
We haven't physically moved it.
But we authorized.
Yes.
And that's what we're
We
gonna.
don't want to.
We have $1 million authorized from.
I'm not sure there's a benefit to do.
And we
Yeah.
want to move,
We need it.
we want to move 4 million from Cursa as well, but that's charged on 21, 22 as well, correct?
Yes, and that just, we're getting to that point. We just got to approve all our final expenditure report from the state. Approving that. That's kind of the first step of the district realizing the person funds coming in.
The capital reserve has to be spent, isn't it finite? Like, you authorize, $5 million or whatever it is, over 5 years.
10 year,
I think 10 years. we did
10 year capital reserve, yeah. You can have no more than 5 million at any given point in time, but you can use and replenish if you want. So most districts, what you'll see is we'll have usually 3 capital reserves running at the same time.
Or you can have more than one.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Because the point is you have to have a cap and there's an expiration date on the fund, but you can't, you can replenish that, but you can't go over that. So if you have multiple reserves running at the same time, and let's say you want to do a really big project, and in order to make it a no tax impact to the community, you might need more than whatever your initial cap is. They're usually all pretty small. I haven't seen many cap reserves that go above that some are $10 million. They're not, that's pretty high cap only because that's a lot of money to put away in one reserve. It's tough to get there. So you'll see districts, they'll spend it down, and they'll replenish it, and they'll have another one kind of rotating. It's crazy.
And you gotta approve those on a 5-year basis.
But you have to approve, the voters have to approve the establishment of the capital reserve. The board has to approve the funding of the reserve.
How about this?
The expenditure is voter approved. So when we do our next capital project, right, and we go out to the voters and we say, the impact for the voters for this capital project would be $2 million. As opposed to raising taxes $2 million, we want to use the capital reserve $2 million. That's a part of the referendum vote. They're going to authorize utilization of the reserves to offset the local share.
But how about the reserve itself? Does that have to be removed by the, does it have to be reapproved by the voters?
So we have the $5 million. We can never have more than a total of $5 million in there. So if we put $3 million in, we spend $3 million, we can't put another $5 million. But the board, but the voters can put another reserve for $5 million or 10. But you can't. I think Peter say replenish it up to the total of it's $5 million. You can't do $5 million and $5 million and $5 million.
We just have to have another voter approved reserve.
Yeah, that's why you say that 2 or 3 hours.
So what do you call it for the voters, like capital reserve fund 2? Or how do you differentiate with the voters that it's a different capital? I just care, what would you do? Is capital reserve fund 2 or?
I think they would just, the resolution would be just to approve the creation of a capital reserve.
Okay.
And then on the accounting ledger, it's gonna have a different ledger line, a different account number.
Yes, I'm just saying for the public, how,
Yeah,
how do you get there?
hopefully we'll learn. Hopefully that's a question we'll be able to learn, right?
Okay.
Baby steps, slow and steady. It'd be nice to get to the point where we're talking about having multiple capital reserves.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
The way it's going, we'll get there.
And Dave, where did this format come from again? The overall.
The overall, I would say, is kind of a morphing of a bunch of various
So you
different financial.
created it out of.
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
that certainly, we want to change the format by all means. but that-
No, I
that's-
just want to understand it.
The comptroller piece, the spreadsheet looking stuff, that's directly from the comptroller. The rest of it just pulled from multiple sources.
Great start, yeah.
And then budget transfers.
Can I ask a question?
Oh, yeah.
before doing it? Now, in the comptroller's audit, we talk about a multi-year financial. Plan and a multi-year capital plan, which are separate things, and we've got them, I think, separate. We're doing this and then it's followed by a capital plan, correct?
Yep. I'd say they're separate but married. And certainly the capital plan, what capital projects are coming, how much of the capital reserve will be used, impact local share taxes. Definitely,
So when you look at most district capital plans, what you'll see is a multi-column approach. So you'll go to all of your building principals and they'll say, give us a laundry list of all the building improvements you want done in your school. So they'll list all of their desires. Then you'll have your architects will come in and the architects will do the same thing. What do they think needs to be done? So now you got your list of what needs to be done. Then you'll categorize it by district wish or that's necessary by architect. And then you'll classify them by greatest need. So there'll be a checkbox by what's most important. Usually it's a 3-tiered system, must be done immediately, should be done soon, can wait. And then you'll have a cost associated. Your construction manager then will attach a cost associated for each of those tasks, and they'll add inflation for a couple of years out. And then your plan basically is by building. You'll see at RFA, usually your high school obviously has the most things attached to it. You'll have probably 10 pages of desired work that needs to be done, categorized by who thinks it needs to be done. The level of urgency is based on by your architect, and the projected cost based by your construction manager. And then you can, in the bottom of it, it'll tell you the total amount of money for capital improvement over X amount of years. And it's usually, something that makes you want to vomit because It's literally a laundry list of everything your principals want and your architect thinks needs to be done.
And that's the multi-year,
That's the multi-year capital, plan, correct?
and that sounds very much like the building condition survey. where-
It's very much like a building condition survey, just a little bit more of a user-friendly format. And traditionally, the district has used the building condition survey information for our submissions to SCD. Because you can't do a capital project without showing SCD your multi-year capital plan. We asked the comptroller that we've never had an official multi-year capital plan, but we've been doing building projects. So we said, how are we getting them approved at SCD if the plan doesn't exist? And it was simply, it's just a different format, right? So this will be a little bit more detailed, and honestly, it'll be easier for people to follow than a building condition survey.
Now, how about other forms, other forms of capital projects, like I'm thinking about, what we're doing in terms of currently looking at, the configuration of the district, which is encompasses multiple buildings and sort of an overview of, it's driven by district-wide considerations about everything from busing to where people live to available buildings and where they're located and all the rest. And that doesn't fit the building stuff is pretty neat because you say, well, this roof is X years old and it's going to be replaced X+5 or something like that. But this one that we're dealing with currently, kind of in spades because of the state situation, is really complex to kind of.
I asked them that exact question, is that how do you build a capital improvement plan when, and I think I use our specific example, like our capital improvement plan would have looked very different last spring than it's going to look this year because we don't even know what we need right now. Like and the response was simply that we understand things fluctuate. It's more or less just we just want to make sure that you're paying attention to what's necessary so that you don't wind up in a cycle where you're coming to the state saying, like Staley, the building hasn't been really renovated in forever. It's falling apart. Now what are we going to do? We need millions of dollars and we're kind of stuck. They just want to see that you're keeping track of minor maintenance things that have to happen over the years versus you're talking big level redistricting. Do we need more classrooms? Do we need more of this? That's all a part of the plan because I can guarantee you that white flag is on us to say you need more classrooms, you need more parking lots, better traffic flow. Those are all one of the same. It's just a matter of picking and choosing which one you do on a given basis.
Except that to me it gets confusing, not confusing, but it's just a little bit overwhelming when you try to address the whole district. This would be just the building. So if we had something we call the capital district, 5-year district capital improvement plan, which foresaw how we saw the district evolving in terms of growth in different areas, or perhaps down the road restructuring to facilitate better busing. In particular, I think the big one is there would be a lot of impact to redistricting in all of those areas because we've never done it. And when you look at the district as a whole or by catchment area, it doesn't. Almost everything is on the periphery of what, if you're talking about the district, we've got all this building stuff on the periphery of our district. When you talk about a given catchment area in general, they're very lopsided. We got Joyce sitting here and it's reaching out to the west, pumping out miles. And you're located 10 miles from your school. How do you facilitate a busing plan that's going to get that kid to school in under an hour?
Right.
Unless you're going to pick up a bunch of kids here and zip to school and then do it that way. But I don't
We
think
could buy Parmalee again.
I think
Buy Parmalee back.
that's I've thought about because I live out that way and I go over that more roads and that school sits there and it's what is it?
That's where I went to elementary school.
They did.
They sort of kept it up, it looks.
They have kept it up. They've done a little bit of work to it. She tried to sell it to us like 5 years ago. It was fun meeting her and walking through it actually.
So it's owned privately by somebody that sends you that other program. I remember being in it a long time
I
ago.
forget her first name, but it's Calbritter. It's his ex-wife,
yeah.
it's Ray's ex-wife owns the building. But in any event, you're correct. I think what you're referring to, Paul, I think we can address that in the capital plan simply by, we do all the nitty gritty details, what needs to be done. And then at the end, like I mentioned with this, for the recommendation section, we can do a recommendation section that outlines, here's what we think needs to be done in sequence in the next 5 years. And they can include looking bigger picture of those types of things.
And a constituent part of that is what we're doing currently, in terms of looking at rate configuration.
Right.
Those recommendations and how to spread that going forward.
Budget transfer?
Budget transfers, I apologize, it doesn't look like they made it into. the-
No,
they
no.
didn't. There is 3 transfers. So I can send them out right after the meeting. Now I can talk about them if that's acceptable.
They're on the draft
They are on
agenda.
the draft agenda.
Yeah.
There's only 3. You have 2 of them are state aided software, state aided hardware. As a reminder, in the state side, those are kind of a bucket of monies. So in any given year, you get instructional materials aids on those items. State allows you to use it in any of those categories. So the first 2 are Patrick essentially choosing to use it in hardware instead of software. So we got to transfer the money over to cover. The third transfer is teacher assistants and special ed over to clerical salaries. Just to cover clerical increases this year in the budget. So project the whole positions coming from. Those are the only 3 transfers. All of course.
Too much hard to learn about budget transfers. I know.
Nature of the beast, right?
Right. The budget is an estimate.
Then treasurer reports.
Reports. All right, I ran into an issue with closing and Gatsby 84 and everything being restructured and getting the beginning balances carried over to July. I now have July finished. I just have to get it to Dave to approve and I can get it out to you and just August, September, October I should be able to, as long as I get them approved by Dave, have them to you by the end of next week. Now everything will flow that I got everything in there. Because we had to restructure everything with the Gatsby before closing, and then it was harder to get those balances to carry over to the where I need them.
Yeah, the brief couple sentences on what gives the 84.
That's where they moved to the trusting agency,
Oh,
the
okay, yeah.
scholarships, the extra classroom, they moved it
Mhm.
to the general fund for closing.
Kind of the name associated with that, the accounting board being board.
Yes.
Yeah,
I always said that when I was in the government too.
I get to see a good rationale.
Like,
why-
why are you
And it
doing
just
this?
was not
Yes.
clean, moving it
They got
over.
this right there. Yeah, yeah.
And then I did want to ask too about the budget reports that you guys wanted, the budget revenue reports. Do you want them like bi-weekly after our warrants? So you can kind of see. Like, we're just once a month.
Into the budget status report.
Yeah, budget status
So-
and revenue status.
You sent a couple of those out, right?
Yes, I
Yeah.
did. And that was with the closing of the June treasurer's report, and I sent out
But it was as of.
Yeah,
It was
whatever
fairly
the-
current.
yeah, it was very current. It's for the current budget.
I think monthly would be fine.
Monthly would be fine.
What is that advice the treasurer's report?
They're included in the treasurer's report. It's just I would be giving you up to date.
Okay, so we asked for something more common or more.
I don't remember who it was.
Yeah, this is the first time I've heard of this,
About
that's why.
sending out reports, and I just wanted to clarify how frequent.
Yeah,
When the treasurer's reports are ready, I'll tell you the bank records, so we
Yeah.
can send you out the other stuff.
Mhm.
Were we talking about the July, August period where it's kind of a
Yeah.
dead zone there for a while?
Yes, okay, you're right.
I mean, now that financial
once
reports.
they get, you know, they
Yeah,
get
we're
the
putting the
month.
treasurer's reports out. They will be out within 2 weeks after the close of.
Yeah, I don't, do you have any idea where this came from?
It may have been the-
I think it was just
because
because
of the audit.
because
Yeah.
we didn't have
Yeah.
anything for several
That does
months.
sound familiar.
Yeah.
It sounds like.
But
If
plan on-
they agree, I don't
plan
think
on
we
that
should
for
do
next
that.
July,
Okay.
July, August, September.
And update them
Yeah.
for the current budget. Okay.
For evening reading. I would go some of the others, they just hook up my monitor, do it real time.
There you go. A guy in Somalia or something. wants to hook up your computer.
He's probably trying right now.
There you go.
The TV stations in circus that, NBC and CBS, local channels there,
They get whacked.
they got wet.
Oh, really?
And they still haven't recovered. Their transitions are really goofy. When they go to the network, all of a sudden they get that little symbol, with this agonizing little jingle that they play with it.
Yeah.
We used to have two different broadcasts, now they have the same one on both channels.
Yeah, but now they just,
Not
the
good.
transitions are crazy, but that's been like
Media, it's not good.
a couple, 3-4 weeks. I don't know if they're not paying their ransom or.
They probably can't afford to pay their rent.
Yeah.
I would guess that it wasn't even on their radar.
Those stories are unbelievably interesting.
22nd century crooks, right?
It's the wild, wild west on computers. One story they tell is of a small municipality that got hit. They tried to take care of it internally. They took care of it, they wrote the check, the ransom people released it. They didn't put it, they didn't review things and they hit them again.
Yeah, it's sad, but it's.
Yeah.
Definitely
Reality.
And you never hear about them not releasing things. They've become so regimented with it. Like you would think you pay the ransom and sometimes the bad guys say, well,
Too bad.
We got it.
they don't.
It's like the problem is they release it, but they release the virus. So that's why they release it back, because they release it back.
See you later.
Plus it keeps them getting paid.
Yeah. Did, just quickly, did anybody have any questions about the ESSER information I sent on Friday? The update to the ESSER thing, we're gonna have coming, with the both these adjustments, does that make sense? You know, we did provide a quick update. So, remember the BOCES created several new programs following the budget adoption. So most of them are related to student alternative ed type programs. There's 4 high school programs, and one goes down to 6th grade, so it's a 1-6-8 program. There's rest of 9-12 and 3-12. We purchased a lot of slots in that to help kids that were simply not doing well online, we're not acclimating back, and also for middle school kids that the elementary principals didn't feel would acclimate well back to the building. So we have quite a few spots, all 4 of those programs. They also created the community schools poster. So previous to the community schools poster, we had, I think, about a $300,000 commitment with them directly. When they created the poster, we upped that to $700,000 commitment through both these because we will generate data on it, number one. So our total investment in community schools will be just shy of $100,000, I think, for the year with the aid coming back. But the difference is the $300,000 got us, I think, 3 or 4 workers. The $700,000 gives them coverage for every building. So we thought it was a wise investment to opt that this year, cover every building. What happened was that increased our BOCES expenditure lines by $2.4 million. Right, so by doing that in the general fund budget, it's not smart because it really puts us up against the top number.
Yeah.
Dave's recommendation was use the ESSER funds to cover that expense for this year. It was an unexpected expense that is allowable. It goes towards student support, things of that nature. We can do that by simply saying to BOCES for year 1, we're not going to aid these expenses. Then year 2, we get to draw the aid out. We can build them into the budget. So it was in our opinion, it's probably the best use of to make sure we don't bust the general fund budget or at least come tight up against it and have to use a ton of fund balance to cover it. And utilize semester funds for this year. That is a one-time expense that's not gonna be used for the following. Okay. It'll be easier to see in writing. I understand that. I just wanted to see if you guys have any questions about any questions about that process or concerns about it before.
Does doing that endanger the actual underlying programs at all? Alternate ed programs that they're gonna provide?
No.
That,
No, as long as we provide the students and pay the bill, those are good. The difference is it will be paid through ESSER funds right now versus general fund. Next year, we'll put them into the general fund budget versus the ESSER because we'll know about
and in the general fund, they'll be both the expenses and reimbursed.
it. Correct.
It'll be one year delay in the bonus reimbursement.
So they started this, they started for them after we did like.
Yeah, in July. Yeah. They started talking about them actually in June.
But they're running right now.
They are
Yeah,
right.
they're right.
Yeah, we've got
And
kids
we
in
have
them.
students
We've got
and-
expenditures. Yeah, our expenditures will be about 2.4 million this year for all said and done for all 4 all-ed programs and the community schools closing.
I think it's good that we're doing that, you know, even though we're, you know,
The programs are not debatable. They're fantastic. And by all accounts, the kids are doing well in them. It's more or less the accounting of how we cover them. And then when weighing the options of risking the general fund budget being up against it, they felt that the ESSER funds would be a good recommendation. I agree. It's logical. It's a one-time expense. It's going to be easier to see when I draw it up. I just wanted to see if anybody had any questions about it.
and the need is there, right? Tim? And-
Oh,
we looked at that
Well,
data.
I'm questioning why did you do it in the first place? And that was the. that was
So the
bottom
reason
line. I know that
we
because-
didn't get rid of it, they got rid of it.
Because no one pulled out.
No, we didn't pull out. We were paying for 70-something slots to the tune of
A lot of money.
$4 million, and we were only utilizing, I think, 28 or 30 on an average year. So I said, we're in a budget crisis here. I can't keep paying you for things we're not using. I said, I'm going to pay you for only what we use. And when we did that, they said, well, we don't have enough money now to run the program.
So they
the right
can't
way."
do the program.
And other districts kind of did the same thing. They had to cancel it because they didn't have enough staff to cover what it traditionally was. I just couldn't justify paying for things we weren't using.
Oh, no. It's just historically though, before that, we were pretty much,
We were
Oh,
sending tons of kids, 60, 70
it,
kids.
we had more kids than slots. You know, the way it always used to be. When I was working, so.
But it was a year hiatus, unfortunately, but the new programs are more career oriented because they're doing internships. One's called Breakthrough Academy.
Yeah, they're good fun. There's no debate.
There's
And that
way
makes them
better
better,
than
'cause I think
traditional.
the original ones, a lot of kids, they had trouble maintaining their interest. You know, they were struggling.
Yeah, it's a lot better than the traditional all day because they actually have career pathways involved. Okay, the only other thing I wanted to ask quick, because we're coming up against the July, oh my God, the November 23rd meeting, was if there are any questions or concerns about the contracts that I sent. I mentioned in the update that we discussed, but we had finance first. If there's something, I would encourage the board to not discuss it over session, only because you don't need somebody thing against you for the or comments. So if it's something we need to discuss with the full board, we can find a way to work good doing things. I just want to make sure we get those on the 11/23 agenda for approval as we can.
And which country to?
You've got the MA policy,
Oh,
cybersecurity.
the one, okay. And I remember reading it now.
YMCA,
Yeah.
Access Global, and what's the fourth one? Oh, MTG marketing consultant. So you want me to work with this, we'll talk about it on tomorrow? Yeah, tomorrow. Wednesday.
Yeah.
Those are all existing efforts, right?
Well, no. Access Global is, yes, we're working with them, it's existing, but that came about, we have the agreement more than $10,000, so our policy board has to approve it. There was some concern about that work, not the work, the magnitude or use mental the YMCA stuff is currently not happening. They usually start later in the year with those are all programs that either they have done historically or they want to try and do. So the YMCA agreement is a part of ESSER funding for that. I'm attempting to give them a pool of money to be able to do what they think they can do with it. One thing about the YMCA is that if they don't use something in their agreement, they give it back every year. They put it in writing that, hey, we don't use whatever. I mean, it doesn't go to them until they invoice for it anyways, so it's not like we just write a blank check. But the YMCA traditionally, if they ask for money and we don't run a program, they put it in writing that we run a program, just so you know. Then MA Policy, we are currently doing work with them, yes, but this work is above and beyond what we do for them in terms of cybersecurity consulting. This is actually going into the building and doing an assessment of our network closets and recommending what types of improvements carry out. I think that's like 200,000 if I remember correctly. And then the last one, Apogee, is not something new. It is something new. We're not doing it right now. That is in response to Shannon Griffith resigning. We talked about it with the People Operations Committee that as opposed to rehiring somebody $45,000 plus benefits, Apogee come in and do a marketing project for us as a consultant for I think their contract was $29,000 maybe was what it was. But it's not a negotiable expense, it's a direct agreement with the company, otherwise you would talk to both people just on that. But that work is creating marketing videos, marketing the district, kind of serving in that capacity of, but that also all comes in conjunction with the new website we're working to launch around the holidays. The new company with the website has what's called, I'm going to draw a blank on what the tool is, but they have a mechanism within their website. It's actually an app development company. They develop an app for you because the research shows people use their phone to look for your information more than the computer now. So they develop the app and then build a website off the app versus the way we traditionally do it. But within the app, it allows us to give anybody we want the district permission to utilize our social media. So if the board want to access the post in the district social media, we can give you the account information. You can take the pictures, type up the post. When you hit submit, instead of it going on to social media, it goes to myself, Chris, whoever administrator is responsible for the oversight of social media to review it, and then click submit. So you don't really need a photographer running around all over the place trying to capture every event. Capturing your events is in the power of the people running the event. So we should be able to promote ourselves better in terms of what's happening through that app. So with that access, I recommend that it might be better to invest our money in a marketing firm to do some real marketing versus hiring somebody who is good at social media, take pictures, go to events, just to see what the difference might be. That was the purpose of the recommendation. I don't
So is that
Oh.
know.
one contractor doing both of those? The website and the marketing?
Apogee is the company that's taking over the website, yes, but the website development stuff is BOSI's. So that's all aidable and closer. We just run that right through them like our current website. The marketing consulting piece is a separate arm of Apogee that we have to contract directly with. So when I look at things, I know I don't want there to be a hole with Shannon leaving, but without having time to really sit and evaluate what we need, I recommended trying the marketing consulting firm, probably at half the cost, if not a little bit better than half the cost of a full-time person with salary to probably get better results, to be honest with you. It's just a recommendation to try something different, that's all. It's not a recurring. I think it was like 29,000 was the cost I thought in that ballpark.
Is that an annual cost or?
It would be a one-time cost. I mean, if we decide to go with more, a lot of these costs initially are startup
Yeah.
So I mean, if we get to the middle of next year and we said, we want to do an additional video, they're probably going to pay for the additional video. I don't know what that would be, but I thought it would be worth a try to see what it does for us. And if it's not worth it, then if the board doesn't feel there's value to it, that's okay. But we had said, and I know Karen had mentioned a few months ago, we want to try and get the contract approved. And I had said, I want to try and do them all together. These are the only 4 that are kind of standing out there. And I don't have anybody else asking to really do anything. So I just want to try and, no one's really asking about them. I just want to get them taken care of.
Do we have to see, I remember reading about FJ and the other one, the one that does security, whatever. Also, yeah. Maybe it was in Patrick's, I don't know, but do we actually see the contract?
I sent them in the update, I think 2 weeks ago.
Okay, all right, so it wasn't just this recent one, okay.
I think they were attached to the recent one too. I have to ask that.
so.
The language is in the update. I don't know if she has had
Yeah, the
some or not.
language is
They're
right.
still in the
I
draft.
remember you said, oh, I remember that, yeah.
Yeah.
I don't remember seeing the contract, but, okay, they went then, like you said,
Yeah.
2 weeks ago, and that's 2 weeks ago, it's a long time ago.
No, it's like feels like a half a year ago right now, but they should be in the drive. We can reset them too. I mean,
But just, if they're there, they're there.
Yeah,
Like I said,
but-
I don't remember seeing this time, but like this and that's gone. I had to-
finding things is not easy anymore. I know I kept the update on there just to
Yeah, I saw
remind you
the
that we
update,
want to try
yeah.
and vote on that, but so is it best just to have a conversation tomorrow night about it, you think?
Yeah, wouldn't hurt. Gonna take that long.
We'll do it in that session.
Oh, yeah, I agree with you on that, yeah.
That way
Yeah.
you don't have to worry about.
Yeah.
anything.
That's up front, right? That's
Well,
No.
yeah, we had to make an adjustment because Colleen can't be here early tomorrow night.
Also, we're not meeting at 5:30.
We are meeting at 5:30 for the appeal.
Oh, right.
We'll start the meeting at 6 instead of 6:30.
Okay.
And then we'll do the second 4 contracts now.
Okay.
But the approval is in the agenda?
No. The approval for the contracts, we would like to do on the next agenda.
Okay.
That's why we're trying to get our ducks in a row.
All righty. Well, thank you.
Thanks, Dave.
It's still 5 tomorrow.
Yeah.
Yeah.